I'm pleased to be joined today by Dr. Sanjay Sarma. Dr. Sarma is Professor of Mechanical Engineering at MIT and also Vice President for Open Learning there. He oversees a welter of fascinating programs and impactful programs, including OpenCourseWare, MITx, MicroMasters, the new MIT Integrated Learning Initiative, and the Jameel World Education Lab. Dr. Sarma earned his undergraduate degree at the Indian Institute of Technology, did some graduate work at Carnegie Mellon, and ultimately did his doctoral work at Cal Berkeley. His current research interests are Internet of Things, street scanning, sensing, RFID, in which he played a key role in developing that technology, autonomy, cybersecurity, logistics, manufacturing, and education, a true polymath. He's the author of 3 books to date, including The Inversion Factor, Grasp, which came out just last year, and most recently this year, Workforce Education, A New Roadmap. Thanks so much for joining JFF Horizons, Sanjay. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Jim. Lovely to see you again.
And we'll just start with exploring this wide range of programs that you oversee at MIT. I'm guessing that the sort of insights that percolated up from those varied programs informed much of what you have brought into this book on workforce education. Could you just speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, this book, Jim, was actually the convergence of 2 similar thoughts, but from different directions. On the one hand, of course, we've done a lot of work in online learning, the science of learning, cognitive psychology of learning, technologies of learning, whether it's massive open online courses on Open edX, or even things like virtual reality. So that's sort of one side of it. That's the supply side of it. But then the flip side of it was we discovered we put these courses out, as you know, on edX, and we found that a lot of our users, the students, are older. They're in the median age is about 27. And so the flip side of it is then we thought, we know what we do. MIT knows what it does, and those are the courses we put up there. Maybe some high school courses, maybe some upper level graduate courses that a working professional might want to take. But do we really know the market? Where is the workforce going? So there I tapped my friend and colleague, Bill Bonvillian, who's a longtime expert on the manufacturing institutes and the workforce. And Bill and I were also coincidentally part of the Work of the Future effort at MIT. So that was looking at it from the other side, which is from the supply side. Where are jobs going? What are new upskilling programs? What are new certificate programs? So this book is the outcome of connecting those 2 threads. So it's like the channel. They started digging from both the UK and from France, and they met in the middle. So that's how this book was formed.
And what would you say are the key takeaways for an audience that obviously is interested both in workforce development and education training? What would you say the key takeaways are from your work with Bill on for an audience such as JFF Horizons?
Yeah, look, it's very interesting. First of all, I think in 2021, I like to say that the 21st century really begins this year. It didn't begin in 2000 or 2001, because humanity just spent a year surviving using technology. I mean, humanity, right? All 7 odd billion people in the world, to the extent they use technology. Now, so we can't have this conversation without talking about COVID, because of the massive impact COVID has had on the workforce. Just in this country, more than 10 million people unemployed, the historic labor non-participation rates. These numbers sort of compare them to World War II, right? 16 million people came back from World War II. And what did the US do? Created the GI Bill, right? And it lifted a whole population into the middle class as a result. What's been happening over the last few years is an erosion of the middle class, which is upper income wage groups have been growing. People in the upper income wage group have been doing better, and lower income, numbers are increasing, and the middle was getting hollowed out. It's what David Water, my colleague, calls the barbell effect, right? And then COVID hits, And in COVID, it turns out lower income wage groups have actually, they've been hit just as hard. So this is a pretty sort of a sobering times. These are sobering times for society. Now, what this book, even before COVID, what we realized was that our education system is monolithic, really. First of all, when we think of higher ed, really people think of, colleges, right? But more than 50% of higher ed comes from community colleges, which doesn't receive attention. And even that, even if you get an associate's degree, it's 2 years. And it's very monolithic. And there is a real need for what I call, we don't write about it in the book, but I've started calling agile continuous education, which is granular. So certificate programs, hands-on boot camps, vocational tech schools, apprenticeships, ways to certify them. And then playing offense on the education side, where you don't just sit people in front of a teacher lecturing, but use online technologies, virtual reality, gamification. And so the real lesson of this, or the real finding for us from this book, was there is a deep need for us to rethink the way in which we deliver learning to our fellow citizens, because learning is no longer something you do for 4 years of your life and you're fit for the rest of your life. Imagine if you said that about fitness. Go to the gym for 4 years and you're fit for the rest of your life. Learning is going to be more like going to a gym 3 times a week. And we have to create what I call a quaternary education system, workforce learning, right? Tertiary, quaternary, right?
Okay.
And make it accessible.
Okay, could you just expand on that quaternary a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, if you ask a typical, this is actually Bill says this beautifully. He says, if you ask a typical American, what does high school look like? They know what it is. What does higher ed look like? Yeah, it's college, There's lots of, either you've been to college or you know what a college looks like, what a college campus looks like. What's workforce education? No one knows. Do I go to YouTube and watch a video? Is there a certificate I can get? What's that certificate called? Oh, I guess I could take a year off and go get a master's and build more debt, but there's nothing beyond that, right? Really. And so we need to legitimize it. And I call it quaternary education as a sort of a joke to say it's not tertiary education.
And in this, so you're in a sense deconstructing this monolithic vision of education pathways. That interestingly, MIT actually was disrupting in the 19th century, insofar as, Harvard's President Eliot was very disparaging of MIT moving away from a classical education toward hand-in-mind education. And yet today, if we fast forward to 2021, most people would see you sitting at the apex of this monolith, not as inside a disruptor to that perspective. And so, that raises 2 questions. One is, how do you see this? You see all these granularities, and of course, in the book, you're not talking for the elimination of community colleges or 4-year colleges, but you're seeing much more of a sort of comprehensive and decentered ecosystem. What does that ecosystem look like for you in terms of how various people entering it might navigate their personal pathways if you were to wave a magic wand and it would work optimally?
Yeah, look, first of all, the monolith, and you're exactly right, MIT, which started as a small vocational school down the river from Harvard. Eliot was a professor at MIT, by the way, before he went to Harvard.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so I think so. We should check it out as a chemist. If I remember my history, that's the case. Maybe I'm wrong, but we'll see. But the point is that even the word technology was new when MIT was established, but it was very hands-on, mens et manus, mind and hand. If you look at the older part of the current MIT campus, which is actually 100 years new, the ceilings are high because it was all workshops. It was, vocational, right? We were the first high-tech school. We were the first maker school. We legitimized maker. And now we're, technology is everything. And so, yes, we find ourselves at the apex. But the good news is we're not, I don't think we've grown used to it. I think we want to continue to disrupt. We want to continue to rethink. And we're open to breaking things down. That's why we created all these credentials ourselves, such as the MicroMasters, right? And today we have about 1 million people enrolled in the MIT X MicroMasters. And we help create edX and Open edX. And so my view, in answer to your sort of underlying question, is that credentials are going to be a huge part of the future. Credentials are not just, the beauty of credentials is some stuff can be delivered online, some requires in person. You can learn the physics of welding and the techniques and the classifications online, but you're going to have to weld and feel the heat in your face and smell the fumes, which I actually find a wonderful smell, to really understand welding, right? But that's blended learning. So you do some stuff online, you do it in the classroom, but you do it continuously in small chunks with credentials. Your achievements are not 4 years or 2 years or nothing, right? Your achievements are incremental. We're even working on a way to string the achievements together digitally using something called digital credentials. MIT founded and is one of the members of the Digital Credentials Consortium. And it is a blockchain-based way to show that you have this credential. And then you can prove it on your resume or your LinkedIn page. So the idea is to deconstruct exactly as you said, but then to create bite-sized offerings so people can consume them at their own pace. How ironic is it, I'll just last comment, that let's say that a student needs a course, a degree needs, I don't know, 100 credits. If you get 99, sorry, you didn't finish. You get 100, oh my God, you're a graduate. Mm-hmm. You know, that's what I mean by monolithic. And we just have to start rethinking that.
And the flip side of that, which you alluded to, and if I may say too, one of the things that I think is really distinctive about MIT, given its role amongst the most elite four-year and graduate universities, is that it does continually reinvent and disrupt itself. And I dare say that you have been more instrumental in that at MIT than anyone there in recent years. And it's really visionary of you. The other end of this, to which you alluded, is that it in fact be taken up by, say, businesses in hiring practice if somebody has the 99 credits, not the full quantum of 100. Do you see that happening today? Do you see that businesses are starting to recognize non-traditional credentialing?
Yes, they are. So first of all, thank you for your kind words. I mean, I see myself as sort of the appointed tip of the spear, but the spear is, you know, the support I get from the president and from all the corporation and all the amazing colleagues at MIT who put this stuff together and are really committed to it. It's very inspiring to be a part of a community like that, which is so, frankly, egalitarian. You know, we haven't gotten used to to our wood paneled offices, should we say, right? We want to be out there. So that's a very MIT thing. Yes, I think businesses are changing. Businesses are saying, I need people who have the skills I need. And I need people, and there's a skills gap emerging at all sectors of society, all levels of society, even our own fantastic graduates. You know, do they have enough experience in working in teams? Well, over the last 20, 30 years, we've done a lot with that, but maybe we need to do more. At the Jameel World Education Lab, one of my colleagues, George Westerman, has put together something called the Human Skills Matrix. Mm-hmm. You know, how do you run teams? How do you negotiate? How do you inspire? You know, how do you communicate? So these are skills that we will have to continue to develop our ability to teach, and businesses value them. Having said that, I think there's also a downside in depending too much on businesses to define the curriculum. So let me explain what I mean. Mm-hmm. There is a difference in the sacred duty of universities and the training a business needs, because a business wants an employee for the next job, but a university is creating or shaping an individual for life. Mm-hmm. So a business may not need that employee to know about Shakespeare or about Chinese history or, about our evolutionary roots in, Africa, right? They don't care. Just come in and program, because damn it, that's what we're hiring you to do. I mean, I'm not saying that a lot of businesses are very high-minded, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
But our sacred duty as educators is to prepare that person to have a fulfilling life, to be able to enjoy, reading, and to be able to be a contributing member to society, to travel, and enjoy, to understand climate change, which of course may not support too much travel, to understand ethical responsibilities. So that conflict, I don't want to airbrush it. There will always be conflict. But I think that right now that conflict is, it's better to surface it and to try and deal with it and to give businesses what they can get, which is that universities think it's in their students' interests, and businesses need to value certificates more.
We're certainly seeing evidence these days in abundance of the dangers that inhere for every factor of society, including the economy, if we have a culturally illiterate and benighted citizenry. And yet that is a tension. I'm seeing so much of the focus toward closing the skills gap for our economic development as a nation. And how do we balance it? Is there a diminishment or a diminution of that preparation for good citizenship and critical thinking?
Yes, there is. I'll tell you, my other concern about just closing skills gaps is the following, which is a little bit of two divergent trends in the labor in the workforce. One is, of course, working for companies, and companies want certain skills to hire the individual. But a lot of young people will become members of what is called the gig economy, which is they'll work for themselves. Mm-hmm. Freelancing, e-lancing. I'm an engineer, I do a gig here, I do a software gig there, I do something else. And there I'm the CEO of my own life. I'm the chief wellness officer of my own life, right? I'm the chief technical officer, chief marketing officer of my own life. And those are subtly different things. Mm-hmm. And that's another tension we should call out. It is not the case anymore that you work for a company for life and live in the company town and see the company doctor. That world is going away. Right. And yet companies may still want employees that do that, rather than employees who can leave and do something else. So certainly at MIT, we empower the agency of the individual. We like to anyway, I think we do, so that they can be critical thinkers and contributors to society, hopefully mitigating some of the concerns that you're raising, which I think are on all our minds.
And if I could just circle back to what the companies are looking for, which is, of course, is salient, but not the totality of what we want to accomplish. You and Bill have a very interesting sort of brief commentary in workforce education, where you talk about the fact that there is a disincentivization for companies to make the proper investments in training incumbent, displaced, or emergent workforce participants, because they may not see the return as an individual company. Those workers might then take the skills that they've been skilled up into and go to another company. So you sort of have this low incentivization on a sort of a John Nash model. How do you overcome that? Does that need to come from the public sector?
Yeah, education, it's a little bit of a tragedy, the commons. I mean, take VOTEC schools, vocational technology schools. Massachusetts has 27 really fantastic vocational technology schools. These are high schools where you learn automotive mechanics, something, or, automotive maintenance, or you learn something else, right? And you're exposed to work. By the way, we get students at MIT from these VOTEC schools. So it's not like it's not like a lower path, it's a different path. But in this country, I think we have this problem that we've dismantled. The government's public sector has dismantled VOTEC schools and has withdrawn a little bit from their educational mission. And so have companies. So that's why it's become orphaned. But some companies have stepped up. Google has stepped up. Some universities have stepped up. That's what Open edX and edX is doing, right? IBM does some amazing work with P-Tech schools. And the problem is, if you're looking at a reward a year out or 6 months out, but if you look medium to long term and your position in society, you think that way. And these companies are thinking that way. But I think the classic success story and historic one is the one from Europe, with the apprenticeship systems. You could go to BMW and get trained as a machinist apprentice, and you get a certificate, and Mercedes will accept that. Daimler-Benz will accept that. So this business of, I think, occupying the commons for the greater good is something we need to encourage, but it's not trivial. In the book, we describe a number of these examples where the community comes together, but it needs to be incentivized. I think if there's one place where we need a sort of not an industrial, but a social policy, it is in education and workforce education.
And among many examples you give domestically, you give prominence to the British and the German apprenticeship models. And overseeing JWEL, the Jameel World Education Lab, do you feel that there is a lot that can be translated to the American domestic context, or do you feel that there is too much particularity to national cultures?
I think there is a lot of particularity. It is, I'll give an example. Let's say I want to be an apprentice and I want to walk away with a certificate in machining. And I know machining really well. This is my research area as well. The person who is coaching me needs to know how to teach, needs to know what is common understanding of what a good machinist is. We don't have those standards. It's almost a social thing, right? What we describe in the book is in certain areas, by the confluence of factors and the leadership of a few, you can sort of create it. In Germany, if you go to, Schwabia, where all the cars are made, there's that culture. In Switzerland, it's that culture, it could be in banking in the Zurich area. It could be in machining in the Geneva area, right? Because of the watchmaking industry. So I think that in this big country where things move very quickly and, it's about the next quarter and so on, it has not been trivial to get that to happen. But there may be incentive mechanisms, a few companies setting examples, educational institutions rewriting their contract with society, rethinking their social contract. I think can happen, but it's going to take a massive effort.
And in regard to companies wanting to hire people who are able to demonstrate the skills that they seek, so many of those skills, and you enumerate some of these, and they're very commonly recognized as 21C skills, or however one wants to designate them: teamwork, creativity, and so forth. And I'm sorry for the noise outside. I'll mute when you're talking. One of the challenges has always been how to readily or reliably assess these skills. And George Westerman's taxonomy is a nice step in that direction. What do you see as promising pathways to be able to reliably, even quantitatively, have demonstrable outcomes of acquisition of skills that are traditionally a little soft and recalcitrant to quantification, that have become so salient, to be able to work in teams, to be able to motivate, to have grit?
Yeah, it's very interesting. What are called soft skills actually should be called hard skills, because they're the hardest. I can learn math and you can test me, but these other skills are very difficult to teach and train. There are techniques, but we don't apply them, like deliberate practice, coaching, there's a lot of work on this, but we have not traditionally applied them. And to measure them is also very difficult. Actually, let me use an analogy. If we went by objective measures, Tom Brady would not be where he is today, because he would never have been selected, nor would Einstein, right? Nor would Steve Jobs. be where what he did. He wouldn't have succeeded because he dropped out of Reed College, right? But somehow society gave him an ability to display his capabilities. Einstein was given the same ability. Martin Luther King was given the same abilities through their own drive and their mission. And we saw what became of them, right? If we simply pick quarterbacks by how high they could jump and how far they could throw the ball, we wouldn't be able to measure grit. We wouldn't be able to measure how quickly you recover from an injury, how you deal with a fumble or throwing an interception, right? Or with scoreboard pressure. So to me, this measurement of competencies is a huge challenge topic and almost a Manhattan Project level. Maybe that's an unfortunate analogy to use, but we need to take it on because that's the only way we can legitimize it. Because if we don't legitimize it, we will always give it lip service.
And are you seeing any promising developments toward that type of effective assessment? George's is one of the best I've seen, but I think George would agree it's still not there yet.
George has a really fantastic rubric, and I should say classification and rubric. And the other things I'm seeing are some very interesting things with gamification. So for example, one of my colleagues, Fox Harrell, has when you do, for example, I don't know, training on sensitivity training, right? One way to do it is just watch videos. What Fox does is he has a game where you get an email, you respond to it, and then someone sends you an email, it has text that you have to deal with. So it's a simulation. So I think there's some very interesting stuff in the simulation virtuality space that's where we'll start getting to it. I'll just say this one thing. Augmented reality, we think of it as this highfalutin new thing, but actually it is an old technology. And if were it not for augmented reality, there's one industry which would not be what it is today, and that's aviation. And that's because of flight simulators. The Link company started making flight simulators 80 years ago. And during World War II, America, Germany, and Japan could all make planes, but only America and the Allies, because of the Link company, could produce pilots. Mm-hmm. So I think these technologies need to be looked at very seriously to achieve what you're talking about.
And that raises, before we close out, I very much wanted to speak to certainly one of MIT's vanguard strengths, which is emerging technology. And what are you seeing as the emerging technologies, specifically to workforce education, that will be the most impactful in the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
I think there are 3 or 4. The most important is actually not a technology at all. It's a technique. And it's based on our understanding of cognitive psychology and cognitive science. And it's a design of structures and design of pedagogy and delivery, and using online blended learning. So that's not even technology, it's technique, right? The word technology comes from technique. But then augmented reality, I give you the example, virtual reality, I think will make a significant difference for sure, especially with aging workforces, for example, the utility industry and upskilling new employees. Artificial intelligence will make a difference, but we're not there yet. But we have a wonderful center that has just been launched at MIT, and other people who've worked on cognitive tutors. Artificial intelligence will make a difference. Strangely, and I'll say this, I've never found great use cases for blockchain, but we've actually found one, which I mentioned earlier, which is about democratizing the transcript. The idea that you can have small achievements, small but substantial, right? And then record them on your resume with a link that says you got it, and so that an employee can verify it. So I think that this just right there is a lot of progress that can be made, in addition to all the amazing things happening with open learning, with online learning.
And by blockchain, you're seeing that as a hack-resistant way to be able to have your personal sort of portfolio of credentials carried with you everywhere you go.
Yeah. I mean, let's say you're a Syrian dissident. It's the most educated population, refugee population in history, right? And you're a dentist, and the regime doesn't want your degree to be displayed? Well, if it's on the blockchain, no one can take it away, right? If you're a young person in California who just took a welding course, you can put on your LinkedIn page, and it's not just text. There's a link. You link on it, click on it, and go and see what it's all about. And this will become the new sort of granular certificate sort of process by which you build your achievements and your career, hopefully.
That's fascinating. Sanjay, I wish we had more time. I always find conversations with you illuminating and galvanizing. I would really encourage people to read Workforce Education. I found it quite insightful. And I think that a nice companion piece with this is your book Grasp, in which you speak more to what is being learned in the science of learning. They really are nice complementary pieces. Thank you so much. A pleasure and an honor.
Thank you so much, Jim. Again, wonderful to see you. Take care, stay safe, and hopefully see you in person soon.
Same here, you as well.